In this video, I'm going to give you 3 principles that will save you from the consequences of what everybody is looking at. Because I look at these videos where people are saying, gee whiz, look at this. They're just looking at their calculator and saying, this makes financial sense. And that is that I can earn just a regular wage and move to this country over here, and I'll have a positive ledger instead of staying back home in big city America and having to share a place, or worse, not being able to afford it. And this isn't negativity, it's prudence. There's a difference. Prudence says, let's look at the facts instead of believing what everybody is saying, which aren't facts, they're just hearsay. Prudence says, well, here's the facts, let's make a complete decision based on the facts. That's how good decisions are made. The first principle is decisions only based on the financials, only considering money, what things will cost, have a high probability of failure. And the reason for that is because you didn't consider all these other things, or the possibility of all these other things, which means you will have surprises crop up. And because we've been in this space so many years, 15 years, we just happen to know that a lot of the surprises end up being deal breakers, which puts you right back at square one, and that is having to come up with a solution, and by having to go back home and having to deal with the situation a different way. Keep in mind that initially there's a time lag when these decisions appear to be working. Like, people will crop up and say, what are you talking about? I'm living on, whatever it is, $2,000 a month. I can become a digital marketing assistant and, make $600 a week online and live over here on $480 rent, and my ledger's positive. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. There's a time lag where initially there's an initial period where it appears to be working on your calculator. However, over a period of time, that's when the surprises start cropping up. Just to say, you'll see people like that in the comments. They'll say, what do you, exactly what I just said. The thing is that all 3 of these principles, we've seen them all 3 become a consequence of making snapshot decisions based on a calculator alone. That's why I'm giving you these 3 principles. It's because they're relevant. Now, the second principle is, this may sound unusual, but we're all relying on paper money, and paper money, whether it's the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the Mexican peso, it's fickle. It's paper, it fluctuates. It does not have a solid value. It isn't something dependable. And you're guaranteed over a period of time you're going to have fluctuations, and they aren't necessarily going to remain in your favor. And a lot of times at first, the arbitrage between the value of your US dollar, which is what you're basing your calculations on, appears positive. But we've been in Europe and we've South America and had that ledger change on us for the negative. And so what may appear to make financial sense, earning $600 a week, whether it's being a digital marketer or whether it's a social security check, doesn't matter. We've seen lots of Canadian retirees having to leave places like Mexico because their Canadian dollar got weak and the Mexican peso got strong. The Japanese yen is in the toilet, so you can be coming in with US dollars and it looks great. But then when the US dollar goes down, things change and your life becomes more expensive. And now your ledger just doesn't look like it did 5 years ago. And along those lines, also, you can be earning in US dollar and that would happen. But even if you're earning in local currency, I'm seeing videos of people that have been like 20 years in a place, and I think the latest thing is going to Japan because, hey, all these reasons why people would go there, and that because one of the main reasons is that they can get a job there. But guess what? People become stuck because, again, their paper currency, the Japanese yen, has no value outside of Japan, and they can't even afford to come back to America because their yen isn't buying anything, and their earnings isn't really buying anything, even though it's buying you a living, at that time. And it's not exclusive to Japan. This happens everywhere, although it's a lot worse in Latin American countries as far as local earnings being too low. In Japan, it appears that at least the local earnings can give you a positive ledger. But again, once you start seeing that the yen has no purchasing power outside of its own environment, that really hits home. And you start waking up to the realization that you're stuck there. These are big picture principles, and that's why I said that just looking at your calculator and saying, gee whiz, this is going to make a lot of financial sense, I can't wait to do this. The third principle is that even though it may seem like, well, look, I don't have to get into debt, I can just go here because it makes financial sense, you still are in debt when you're dependent on a landlord. And a lot of these videos make it sound like, look how cheap something is, but that's only relative. Let me explain that. When you look at a video that says, look at my cheap apartment, it's only $480 compared to, what I would have to pay in, say, New York, Los Angeles, Miami, whatever, Atlanta. When you look at that and then you find out, it's a nice apartment, that it's only 180 square feet. First off, okay, the initial liberation of having a positive financial ledger kind of blinds people into not seeing the long-term consequences. And is this 180 square feet for $480 is like almost $250 a foot, which translates into $2,500 for 1,000 square foot apartments. So you're really on a square foot basis, it's not a deal, okay? That's what I'm saying. And you're dependent on a landlord, which is it's similar to being in debt. You're indebted to landlords. Sure, you can leave that apartment, but you'll have to go to another apartment. So, and yeah, you can find a cheaper one, but you may have to move out of the area where everybody else is going, because that's what makes rents always go up, is demand. So you have zero control over your expenses in the long run, and this is a deal-breaking consequence. We've seen people have to leave places and actually get kicked out by landlords that where they initially had a reasonable rent, but then they saw all the foreigners coming in, and the rents, they wanted to just double the rents for the new foreigners, and we've seen people get kicked out and not be able to find additional rents. So yes, you're still dependent on a landlord, even in a place where in all appearances it looks like you're getting a deal and your financial ledger is positive and everything looks wonderful, but when I say the long run, it's really more of a medium term, where medium to short term really, because these kinds of things tend to, any one of these three things easily tips against you at any time, generally speaking, within just a few short years. And so prudence dictates that we should consider all of these factors before rushing out and going somewhere and deciding, this is the place, I've found my place in the world where I'm going to live. I hope I've helped you consider everything so that you can make a prudent decision. And thanks for listening, and have a wonderful day. I know what you want. That's right, look right into the camera. Good girl.